Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a topic that's sure to be as comfortable as a scorpion-filled sleeping bag. Why Israel has banned citizens from certain countries from even setting foot inside its borders. And believe me, the list of those countries might just surprise you. We're talking about a real head-scratcher of a situation, folks. It's like trying to get into an exclusive nightclub, except instead of a velvet rope and a bouncer with a clipboard, it's a complex geopolitical situation and, well, probably a clipboard somewhere, but who needs velvet ropes when you have decades of political tension? So buckle up, because over the next few minutes we're going to unpack the history, the politics, and yes, even the economics of this controversial issue. We'll try to make sense of it all, or at least we'll try to find some humor in the absurdity. Stick around. It's going to be a wild ride. To understand why certain countries are on Israel's no-fly list, we really need to take a trip back in time. And no, I don't mean a quick jaunt to the Dead Sea Scrolls. We're talking about diving deep into the tumultuous history of the region. From its very inception in 1948, Israel has found itself surrounded by, shall we say, less than friendly neighbors. It's a bit like that awkward family reunion where everyone's arguing over who gets the last potato salad. But instead of potato salad, it's, existential questions of land and identity. And look, these conflicts weren't just your average war of words. We're talking full-blown wars, folks. The kind with tanks and airstrikes and enough historical baggage to fill a cargo plane. Naturally, this history of conflict has had a profound impact on Israel's relationship with its neighbors. So it's not exactly shocking that some of these countries might end up on a do not enter list. Of course, no good story about international relations is complete without a healthy dose of politics. And this one's got enough political intrigue to make House of Cards look like a game of checkers. See, some of the travel bans imposed by Israel are directly linked to its ongoing conflict with Palestine. Countries that officially recognize Palestine as a state or have strong ties with Palestinian leadership? Well, let's just say their citizens might find it a tad difficult to book a weekend getaway to Tel Aviv. And if you thought that was messy, just wait. We haven't even gotten to the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, or BDS for short. This global campaign, which aims to put pressure on Israel over its treatment of Palestinians, has also added fuel to the fire. Israel argues that the BDS movement is inherently anti-Semitic and poses a threat to its security. So they've taken steps to bar entry to activists and organizations associated with the movement. It's a tangled web, folks. And unfortunately, there's no magical spider to spin a simple solution. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the security checkpoint in the airport terminal. Israel has, understandably so, been laser-focused on security for, well, its entire existence. And look, given its history and geopolitical climate, that focus is hardly surprising. It's like living next door to a pack of rabid badgers. You'd probably invest in a pretty sturdy fence too. So when it comes to travel bans, Israel argues that some are necessary to prevent potential threats from entering the country. These threats can range from terrorism to espionage, and everything in between. They point to intelligence reports, past incidents, and the ever-present fear of attacks as justification for these measures. Critics, however, argue that these bans are often discriminatory and based on unfounded fears rather than concrete evidence. Chapter 4. Tourism takes a hit, empty beaches, and frustrated travelers. So what happens when you slap travel bans on a bunch of countries? Well, for starters, your tourism industry might start to feel a little neglected. Israel, despite its, let's say, unique geopolitical situation, has a lot to offer tourists. Historical sites, religious landmarks, beautiful beaches, you name it, they've probably got it. But with travel bans in place, many potential visitors are finding themselves out of luck. And that means lost revenue for businesses, fewer jobs in the tourism sector, and a whole lot of empty hotel rooms. Of course, Israel argues that security concerns outweigh the economic impact of these bans. But critics argue that the bans are hurting ordinary citizens and businesses while doing little to actually address the root causes of the security concerns. Chapter 5. When push comes to shove, the incidents behind the bans. Now, some of these travel bans weren't just implemented out of the blue. Oh no, they were often reactions to specific incidents that, let's just say, didn't exactly inspire confidence in international relations. Think of it like that time your neighbor's dog dug up your prize-winning petunias. You probably wouldn't be too keen on having them over for tea and biscuits anytime soon, would you? For example, one country might have been slapped with a travel ban after a group of its citizens were caught trying to enter Israel with forged documents. Another country might have been banned after its government made some, shall we say, unflattering remarks about Israel on the international stage. It's a bit like a geopolitical game of tit for tat, except instead of playground insults, we're talking about travel restrictions and diplomatic standoffs. Chapter 6. The Economic Echo. When bans hit more than just tourism. Now, we've already established that travel bans can put a real damper on the tourism industry, but the economic impact doesn't stop there, oh no. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a business owner in Israel who relies on importing raw materials from one of the banned countries. Suddenly, you can't get your hands on those materials. Your production grinds to a halt, and you're left wondering what hit you. On the flip side, businesses in the banned countries are also feeling the pinch. They've lost access to a potentially lucrative market, and their economies are suffering as a result. It's a lose-lose situation, really, and it highlights the interconnectedness of the global economy. When one country sneezes, economically speaking, the rest of the world is likely to catch a cold. Of course, no discussion of travel bans would be complete without addressing the very real human cost. Because behind the political posturing and the economic arguments, there are real people whose lives are being directly impacted by these restrictions. We're talking about families separated by borders, students unable to pursue educational opportunities, and individuals denied access to medical treatment. Imagine being told you can't visit your sick relative in another country, or that you can't accept a scholarship to study abroad, all because of your nationality. It's a heartbreaking reality for many, and it raises serious questions about the proportionality and fairness of these bans. Critics argue that these bans often amount to collective punishment, targeting innocent individuals for the actions of their governments. Chapter 8. Exceptions to the rule of family and other loopholes. Now, before you start thinking that Israel's travel bans are completely impenetrable, let me tell you, there are exceptions. Because even in the complex world of geopolitics, there's always room for a little bit of, dare I say, hope. In certain cases, individuals from banned countries may be granted entry to Israel for humanitarian reasons, such as attending a funeral or visiting a critically ill family member. There are also exceptions made for students participating in exchange programs, business people with special visas, and individuals with dual citizenship. These exceptions, however, are often granted on a case-by-case basis, and the process for obtaining them can be lengthy, bureaucratic, and frankly, a bit of a nightmare. It's a bit like trying to navigate a labyrinth blindfolded. You might eventually find your way out, but it's going to be a frustrating and disorienting experience. Chapter 9. A global phenomenon. Israel's not alone in this. Now, before we get too caught up in criticizing Israel's travel bans, it's important to remember that they're not alone in this. In fact, travel bans and restrictions are a surprisingly common tool used by countries around the world for a variety of reasons. The United States, for example, has its own list of countries whose citizens are subject to travel restrictions, often citing security concerns. And let's not forget about those good old-fashioned visa requirements, which can feel like a travel ban in their own right. Am I right? The point is, while Israel's travel bans might seem particularly stringent, they're part of a larger global trend of governments using border control as a way to manage perceived threats and advance their own interests. It's a messy and often controversial issue, with no easy answers. Chapter 10. So, what's next? The future of travel to Israel. So, where do we go from here? Well, the truth is, the future of travel to Israel is about as clear as a crystal ball filled with mud. The current political climate, the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the ever-present threat of terrorism all suggest that these travel bans are unlikely to disappear anytime soon. However, as we've seen, there are exceptions to every rule, and there's always hope for dialogue, diplomacy, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of common sense to prevail. Until then, travelers will have to navigate the complex web of restrictions, hoping for the best, but preparing for the possibility of disappointment. It's a reminder that in our interconnected world, the freedom to travel is a privilege, not a right, and one that can be revoked at a moment's notice. Outro, that's all, folks, for now. So there you have it, a crash course in the complex and often controversial world of Israel's travel bans. We've covered the history, the politics, the security concerns, and the human impact of these restrictions. But as with most things in life, there are no easy answers. What do you think? Are these travel bans justified? Are they effective? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos on fascinating and thought-provoking topics from around the world.